So, you want to read Marvel Comics in 2024, but you have no idea where to start. Don't worry, stay tuned, I got you covered. Welcome to A Marvelous Life. I'm Nashology, your guide into Marvel Comics. Starting to read comics nowadays is extremely daunting, and for good reason. Just one scroll down Marvel Unlimited, the online comic reader, is enough to give you an aneurysm, or at least a small heart attack. But it doesn't have to be that difficult or scary. Now, it is true that Marvel Comics has basically shared the same continuity since the 1960s, but that doesn't mean you need to read it all in order to build a solid understanding of Marvel Comics. So, before we get started, I'm going to assume two things. First, you have never read a Marvel comic before, and second, you are a fan of the MCU and want to finally bridge the gap into the world of comics. Now, if you've been keeping up with the MCU, you'll likely be familiar with the concept of the multiverse. This concept is important because the comics work in a very similar fashion. You have a main timeline where the vast majority of stories take place, but you also have different universes happening at the same time. For this video, we're going to pay attention to two universes that you should definitely pay attention to. These two universes are known as the Ultimate Universe and the 616 Universe. They're both distinct and follow their own continuity. The 616 Universe is the main universe where the majority of the stories take place. This is the universe where you'll spend the vast majority of your time. And the Ultimate Universe, although much smaller, is actually much simpler to read due to it being created in the year 2000 and only lasting until 2015. Oh, and this universe was a strong influence on the early stages of the MCU. But don't worry, it'll all be very simple to follow. Let's get started. One of the most popular places to begin reading Marvel Comics is none other than Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis, which takes place within the Ultimate Universe. He's by far the most popular superhero in the world, and this book is one of the very best places to begin reading. Released in 2000, this series completely reimagines the origins of Spider-Man in a modern setting. And that means one thing: you get to skip 60 years worth of continuity. You can go into this story knowing absolutely nothing, which saves you a hell of a lot of time. The series strips down Spider-Man to its core elements, removes all of the fluff, and creates a narrative that's fast-paced and jam-packed with web-crawling action. And this series is perfect for those of you that are only familiar with the MCU. The narrative style is engaging and grounded, with a nice blend of humor, action, and drama that closely resembles what you've come to expect from a mainline MCU product. In fact, most of what you've seen in the Tom Holland movies, at least in terms of depiction and portrayal, is directly influenced from this story. Oh, and unless you've been hiding under a rock for the past few years, then you should be very familiar with Miles Morales. I mean, the guy is basically everywhere nowadays. Well, luckily for you, Miles Morales was created in this story. So not only do you get a fresh start on the Spider-Man mythos, but you also get to experience the birth of Miles Morales, one of the best new superheroes of the modern era. You cannot go wrong with Ultimate Spider-Man. This is one of the best places to begin reading Marvel Comics. Okay, sticking with the Ultimate Universe, we got one more series for you on this journey into comics. And yes, this next one is more relevant than ever. Ultimate X-Men, released in 2001, is a modern retelling of the X-Men mythos and a great entry point into the lore of mutants. For those of you that don't know, the X-Men were first introduced in 1963, so that means there's over 60 years worth of stories involving the X-Men and a hell of a lot of history to unpack. A pretty daunting task, to say the least. But Ultimate X-Men erases all of that and starts fresh, just like Ultimate Spider-Man did. That's 60 years of history gone. So, for those of you who grew up with the X-Men movies, this book carries over the attitude and vibe you're very familiar with. A great place to jump on. It takes place in a more modern world, characters are more contemporary, and backgrounds are more relevant to today's day and age. In other words, because you're not tied to decades of history, there's a lot more freedom with the storytelling. And if you love X-Men, you cannot get more accessible than this. All of your favorite characters from the films are very much present, with characters like Wolverine and Cyclops containing personalities that align with their cinematic counterparts, which provides you, as the reader, with a strong sense of familiarity. And probably the most important thing to a lot of you, the art is beautiful, dynamic, and very engrossing. If you're like me, which you probably are, you might have a hard time reading classic comic books due to their terribly outdated art style. And thankfully, you'll find none of that here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure this was fine back in the day, but for the love of God, not in 2024. Ultimate X-Men simplifies the lore, introduces themes that are more relevant to this modern age, and presents it without thousands and thousands of pages of pointless exposition. And finally, one last point that might intrigue you even more. The Ultimate line of comics are not scared to kill off its heroes. In fact, many heroes die in these books. There's no resurrection, no cheap last-minute magic, and no do-overs. Characters get brutally murdered all over the place, and some of these deaths are pretty damn disturbing. With that said, Ultimate X-Men is streamlined, highly accessible, and engaging for newcomers. It's an excellent place to begin your journey to Marvel Comics. So, for now, we're done with the Ultimate Universe, and it's time to take a look at the 616 universe, the main continuity at which the majority of Marvel Comics takes place. Whereas the Ultimate Universe began in the year 2000, the 616 began all the way back 1939, with the birth of Namor the Submariner. Because the 616 universe is the main continuity here, you might just want to stick to stories within this universe. So, what better way to start off than with the X-Men of the 616? New X-Men by Grant Morrison was released in 2001 and brought the mutants into the modern age. And just like in the Ultimate Universe, the new X-Men emphasizes characters that you're already familiar with, and introduces a darker, more realistic tone that's more in line with the type of mature content that readers now enjoy. And just so you know, the new X-Men series was the very first series that I read when I started back into the world of comics. So don't worry, you can actually start here with very little knowledge of anything else in the Marvel Universe. The content found in this series is still regarded as some of the best X-Men stories ever told. A catastrophic attack on the island of Genosha that kills over 90% of all mutants on Earth, the introduction of Cassandra Nova, who is the deadly twin of Charles Xavier, the rise of Emma Frost, one of the best supporting X-Men characters of all time, and so much more. Really, if you're a fan of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine or Patrick Stewart's Professor X, then you'll absolutely love this series. For new readers, you cannot go wrong with 2001's New X-Men. So far, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and New X-Men are three of the very best places to begin reading Marvel Comics. But there is one place that dwarfs all the rest. And in my opinion, this is the very best place to begin reading Marvel Comics. The New Avengers 2005 series by Brian Michael Bendis, along with its prequel Avengers Disassembled. These are the stories that revolutionized the Marvel Universe. MCU fans take notice. Remember Wanda's breakdown in WandaVision, culminating in her push to the dark side in Multiverse of Madness? Yeah, well, that came from this series. How about Civil War and the schism that split the Avengers apart? You guessed it, from this book. Disney Plus Secret Invasion? Yeah, that's here too. The all-powerful Sentry? World War Hulk? Dark Avengers? Okay, let's not spoil the entire future of the MCU. A lot of what you love about the MCU literally comes from the New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. It's the Avengers personified, and everything that makes the team great. You have incredible characters like Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, and Bucky Barnes' Captain America. And not to mention two all-time favorite characters side by side, Wolverine and Spider-Man, both incredible additions to the Avengers. And if you're not sold on this story by now, there's no convincing you. This is the absolute perfect gateway into Marvel Comics. And although the MCU will always be one of the greatest achievements in cinema history, it will always pale in comparison to the comics universe. And I really do mean that. And there you have it. It's 2024, and you now have 4 amazing ways to jump into Marvel Comics. Now, these suggestions are ways for you to enjoy the entire Marvel Universe as a whole. But what about specific characters like Daredevil, Spider-Man, or even Wolverine? Well, let me know in the comment section below if you want me to create guides on where the best places to begin reading for each character. For now, check out these stories and have fun on your journey through the Marvel Universe. Your 2024 just got a whole lot better. The only thing left on your list now is a better job. Because with over 30,000 Marvel Comics out there, you're going to need a lot of money.